All right, there we go. All right, good afternoon. My name is Melissa Albino Hegeman, and I am the co-chair of the Professional Development Committee for the New York State GIS Association. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending this lunchtime webinar. Today we have Karl Vilacoba, who's going to talk to us about the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal. Karl is the Monmouth University Urban Coast Institute's Communication Director and the Communications Lead and Project Manager for the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal. So I'm going to switch it over to you, Karl. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Melissa, and everybody. Apologies for that holdup. I know we've all had a lot of fun these last however many months it's been, doing all kinds of things in different Zoom and all of the other programs, and they all have their little quirks that need to be figured out, but it just took a couple of extra minutes for us. But hopefully now you can see me, hear me, and we can get going. So yeah, my name is, again, Karl Vilacoba. I am the communications director for the Monmouth University Urban Coast Institute, which is located in West Long Branch on the Jersey Shore. And I'm the communications lead for the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal. You know, actually, I think I just skipped this. I skipped a slide there. There we go. Okay, still getting the hang of this. So I often put the portal in perspective by showing a photo like this to get started, right? You go to the beach, put your chair in the sand, look out at the water, and you see something like this, you know, this clear, watery void, everything just so peaceful and calm for miles and miles around. But the reality is something a little bit different. The ocean, and especially here in the mid-Atlantic, is a very busy place. And it's getting busier all the time. As you can see on this map, you've got all kinds of traffic coming in and out of the Port of New York, which is the second busiest in the country. You've got fishing activity, you've got undersea cable lines, you've got offshore wind on the way, recreational fishing. What the portal does is help you visualize all of these things and how they relate to each other, and in some cases, how they conflict with one another. So people who are in ocean management roles or research, people, you know, can basically figure out how to help solve some of these conflicts before they happen. So what's on the portal? Currently about 5,000 different map layers organized into a dozen themes or categories. We've got some instructional and educational resources, including a blog, our own kind of story map meets digital magazine type application called Ocean Stories, a calendar for upcoming events of interest, webinars that we do on a bi-monthly or so basis. We've got all kinds of other tools to help people share maps and collaborate in groups on work projects. The portal team currently is Monmouth University, where I sit, Rutgers University, the Nature Conservancy, and EcoTrust, our developer, which is out in Portland, Oregon. And we work under the guidance of the Mid-Atlantic Regional Council on the Ocean, or MARCO. MARCO is a consortium that was formed by the 5 mid-Atlantic states, who we would consider from New York down through Virginia, to work on ocean issues. And its current chair is New York, and specifically Keisha Santiago Martinez from the New York Department of State. The portal, you know, is chiefly focused on the Mid-Atlantic region, like I said, from, you know, New York through Virginia and ocean waters off our coasts. There is another parallel effort like that, the Northeast portal, which covers New England, who we work very closely with and develop a lot of our data in partnership with. We share a lot of our data with the various state portals for states who have them, like the New York Information Gateway, which is a great resource. And there is a federal level portal called the Marine Cadastre, which is run by by NOAA and BOEM. And in some cases, we share information with them as well. A couple of examples of how the portal is used. Offshore wind has been a major driver for the kinds of data that we're putting on there. Wind developers are using it to study the areas that they are hoping to build on. You've got, people in, fishing, shipping industries and so forth who are also using it to study how offshore wind will relate with the grounds that they rely on, the shipping lanes that they take coming in and out of New York Harbor. And, the government agencies are looking at it and using this data to help make sure that any grounds that are developed as wind farms are safe, won't cause too much of an economic disruption, and that kind of thing. Submarine cables. Even in this wireless world, we are still 98% dependent on these cables that cross the Atlantic and head down to places like South America for our communications, and have been since 1860s or so. New York and New Jersey are basically the epicenter for all of the cable activity on the East Coast. But in the last couple of years, we've seen more and more of it develop down in, for example, Virginia Beach, which has become a significant hub. And you can see here on my screen the blue lines that are coming in and out from Virginia Beach, which is, if you've ever been down there, is a major security area. It has the largest naval base in the world at Norfolk and that whole complex. So after Hurricane Sandy, when there was so much disruption to internet and telecom because New York was hit so bad, there was a push to build up some redundancy into the system. And so they used the portal to help design an alignment that would steer clear of some of the military training grounds, areas where there's unexploded bomb dump areas from post-World War II, areas where there's a lot of bottom-tending fishing gear that can get snagged on the line. And that continues to happen and will be an important use as the power cables run from the offshore wind areas when they're built. Here in New York, we're all very happy to see this great resurgence in humpback whales off our coast, but that also creates some issues with, all the shipping traffic and the possibility for vessel strikes for these giant animals that are in the area. I've heard it compared to children playing in the middle of the New Jersey Turnpike when you look at the Ambrose Channel that comes in and out of New York. And so people are using the portal to study where the areas are where there's the highest level of interaction, so that there can be some public awareness done around that, and also possibly some measures like speed limit changes during certain times of year when they're migrating north and south and are most present in our area. And finally, we've seen it just grow as an educational resource. That picture right there shows me doing what's become an annual kind of tradition where I'll do a training at the New York Aquarium for New York City public school teachers. That's always fun. So people at the university levels are using it, but also in middle school and high school for marine science classes and stuff like that. So with that, I'm going to jump into the actual portal site. Melissa, can you see that okay? Hearing none, I'm going to assume that that's okay. So this is the portal homepage, and I would encourage you, if you want to check it out.
Actually, Karl?
Yep.
I can't see the portal right now. It's still on your presentation.
Okay, let me try closing out of the presentation then. Go. If I hit close. How about now?
Yes,
Awesome.
all good.
Okay, we're getting there. So this is the portal homepage, portal.midatlanticocean.org. And I would encourage you, if you want to hop on there and follow along, you're welcome to do that. So the main event, so to speak, of the portal is our mapping application, which we call Marine Planner, which you can get to by clicking on this map link up top or in this bottom left cell here, View Maps. But before I do that, just want to quickly point out a few things. This blog here is a great resource if you want to use the portal. It's a good place to check in once in a while and follow what the newest, latest stuff is. Anytime we have a major new data addition or tool upgrade, you can find out about it here. Click on one of these stories for the details about what it is, how you access it, how you use it, instructional kinds of materials. I mentioned the ocean stories before. So for an example of that, talking about the humpback whales before, I did a ride along with Gotham Whale out of Rockaway about 2 years ago. And you can see up top, you've got this map up there. And as you scroll down and read the story, that map can change to help sort of tell the story. And the story helps explain the data that you're seeing in the maps. And you can also, in some of these, see neat video clips and photos and that kind of thing. So that's a good educational resource. The calendar gets quiet this time of year, but certainly any kind of events dealing with ocean planning activities and GIS and that kind of stuff, we're happy to post here. Just email us at this address up there, which I answer, and I'm happy to post your event. Under the Help tab, using the portal, you may tomorrow jump back onto the portal and you know, you're wondering, you saw me do something and you're curious how I did that and want some guidance on it. You can find all kinds of 1-minute videos and diagrams and fact sheets and that kind of thing to help answer some of those basic questions. So with that, off to the map. By default, we have this ocean-based map view here, but that can be changed to satellite view, street map view, gray. That just helps drive a contrast sometimes, whatever really makes most sense for your mapping needs. But on the left are the 12 themes I mentioned, starting here with administrative, which is basically government boundaries. And all you have to do is click on it, and then click one or any number of different map layers here to view them in combination. And once you've done that, you can click on this active tab, which gives you some options to manipulate how they look and what's showing and all of that. So for example, let's say these federal consistency areas, you want to put them up at the very top. Let's say you want to make them a lot darker or lighter. You have the option with that tool in the middle to adjust the opacity or to mute it altogether or to cross it out. The legend tab shows the legend. And when you're on that active view right there, this green eye icon, you can click on for a quick explanation of what you're seeing. It gives you the first few sentences, but then you can click read more, which will take you directly to the full explanation in the data catalog. And I should also mention here, we view ourselves as a public information effort and want to the best of our ability, offer all of our data for download yourself in case you have GIS capabilities at work and can actually do some things on your own desktop and so forth. So we will offer that data for direct download if possible, metadata links for more information, a click straight to the source of that information. The tiles, you can get a link if you can ingest the service on your own. And so there are those options there that people can take advantage of. So I'll just close out of here and get back into the map cleanly. Oh. So beneath that, fishing is a huge driver of traffic and use on the portal. Artificial reefs are one of our most frequently activated layers, and zoom in a little bit to the New York, New Jersey coast to focus on that. So we have two general categories of fishing data. VMS, which I would equate almost to like a transponder from EasyPass that's in your car that pings the infrastructure, and it does that with the VMS. And what we do is take full years or multiple years and draw a fuller picture of activity. So for example, this is by catch type. Scallop, which is a major, very valuable fishery in the New York and New Jersey area. So we'll look here. Here's 2011 through 14. I'll zoom out just a little bit. We have two views of it. The full view of all of their positioning data, or you can look at it by slower speeds. So in this case, scrolling down there, under 5 knots. The idea here being that captures more likely the actual fishing effort and not the transit coming in and out of the ports. So again, here's all, and you can see out of the inlets a lot of activity. But if you look at the slower speed, this is probably more reflective of where they're actually doing their fishing. Under that, we have VTR, vessel trip reports, which are filed by the captains, and they have to report things like how many people were on board working, how many pounds they landed, those kinds of things. This we have by gear type. So dredge in this case would be the one that captures the scallop activity and also surf clam and some others. And this is kind of interesting because we call this our communities at sea data, because you can click on any point in the map for a pop-up that tells you the communities that depended on that area at sea. So in that case right there, you see New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, Virginia, Connecticut, all federally licensed fishermen that are coming to that specific spot. And you get that idea of just how cross-state the importance of these areas is. You can click on any port here for a pop-up that tells you for, again, dredge in this case, in that period of 2011 through 15, what the percentage was for that port for the of that particular gear type in that time period. So Point Pleasant, you can see about 10%. That's a lot. Total fisher days, 27,000 in that period. And that's a pretty useful thing. Let's say if you're doing some outreach around offshore wind and you want to know who the people are in a certain area and contact them for input. So scrolling down, the communities at sea by port shows that same kind of thing, but in this case for specific ports. So for in this case, that last map, and I'll say total here is another way to show the full regional thing. But let's say you're only considering Montauk. and you wanted to really know where 90% of their fishing effort was spent. You can see the outlines that show the areas that were most valuable and important for them. Scrolling down into our marine life catalog, lots of stuff here for migratory birds, fish, marine mammals, sea turtles. So for example here, marine mammals, you can click all. I'll zoom out a bit. So that predicts basically based on past data where they are most abundant, or you can look at certain groups. So baleen whales, for example, right whales and humpbacks. We also, kind of like we have that drill down between the fishing groups and ports, have a search widget where you can find just specific species. So for marine mammals, again, let's say we were looking for just humpbacks, and this offers you seasonal information. So it's November, where would they be? You get that sense. And you can see some seasonal variation. This is the time of year where they're coming from the north and starting to head down toward Virginia, toward the Caribbean, to Calf. So there's a big migration underway. Underneath that, maritime, really a lot of the human use data here. Among the most important are these AIS vessel transit count data sets. So like the VMS that I showed, AIS is another one where you've got the transponder and you're pinging infrastructure on land and the satellite to give a sense of your position. And we have all kinds of different categories here. So this is for all vessels carrying AIS. So that generally captures anything that's like a cargo ship, any vessel that's over 65 feet, or ones that have federal permits for certain things would be included. But if you were to drill down, you could see only cargo. You could see something like tug and tow, which tend to stay closer to shore. Or you could see pleasure craft, sailing vessels. So that's like the mom and pops, people that have their own private boats and like to go fishing on the weekend and that kind of thing. And there's others. And another way of looking at it, we have these monthly data sliders. So you can look at all of those different categories, but in this case, check out how they change over time throughout the course of the year. So something like cargo, these guys are really living within the designated lanes and don't drift out very far. So that something like that's not going to change. But if you look at like fishing, you can see it really is quite variable as the year goes on. When it gets very cold, it slows down. Same with something like the pleasure and sailing vessels. It's almost completely dead in those January, February months, and then it gets much more active in the summer. Scrolling down, a whole lot more of our data related to ports, cool things like historic lighthouse locations, wrecks and obstructions. This is just one of those cool ones that you can really get lost in, where you can click on any of these wreck spots and get a pop-up that tells you what the ship's name was, when they believe it sunk, what happened. When you get really far out at sea, you know what, I'm going to change the base map so they're a little more visible. So they use a very light color for that one. You see a lot of torpedoed vessels from World War I, World War II. When you click on the pop-up, and it's a little slow. There we go. So that's the Canton. Not a whole lot of information on that particular vessel. Some have more. That one sunk 1944. So just very interesting history out there. The oceanography theme, basically physical characteristics of the ocean. We have stuff like bathymetry data showing, the contours of the ocean bottom. Very important for a lot of reasons. Stuff like our storms data, where you can look at the last 40 years and view a slider that shows all of the tropical storms and hurricanes that pass through the area in that period and how much change there's been. So that's the monthly slider version, but when you look at the static one, which shows all 40 years, you do have the option to click for a pop-up, Hurricane Gloria. I'm old enough to remember that one. And it tells you what the date was, its top speed when it was at that particular area, and the map legend will show what the different colors mean. And so when it changes from the darker red to the pink, that means it goes from a category 2 to a category 1, and so on. So just an interesting research tool right there. We do have some recreational data. So for example, for New York, here are some things that we actually do take from the state portal. So New York recreational fishing areas, you can do pop-ups to find out about that area. Hudson Canyon, another huge one. And people who were surveyed gave information about what kind of stuff you can catch out there and what it's best known for. Renewable energy, super important. Here's where you can see the areas that are leased and under consideration for offshore wind. Without getting too much into that process, all of these yellower areas up there are the active lease areas, which people have the rights to. And then these darker areas right now are ones that are under consideration and going through the public comment process and could get whittled down. But you do see off the coast of New York and New Jersey how much there is planned right now for offshore wind activity. Security, a lot of declassified information from the Navy, stuff like restricted areas where you're not allowed to sail into, areas where they have training sites and unexploded bombs off the coast. We do have some economic data. For example, right here, ocean employment as percent of county employment. So pretty much pound for pound, how much each of these counties depend on the ocean for their jobs. And then finally, water quality. This is a new one that we're going to be building out a lot in the year ahead. Right now, there's not a whole lot of data in there, but we do have stuff like offshore discharge flow. So where the areas are that sewage pipes flow out to, and there's outflow pipes and that kind of thing. Then really quickly, just to look at some of our tools. To the right, we have a print export button, a link here to generate a short URL or an embed code if there's a map that you'd like to post on your own website. We do have a linear measurement tool, which is helpful for things like, let's say, renewable energy areas. You're curious how far that is from shore. And you can see that it gives you readings in kilometers, miles, and nautical miles. Beneath that, you've got add an arc rest layer. This is a special tool where basically any GIS site that you have access to, that if there's a layer that we don't have on the portal that you would like to pull in, whether it's something ocean related or land-based transportation, you name it, you can do that. So here's an example of one that I'm working with Melissa to try to roll out in the very near future about some artificial reef areas that are proposed off the coast of Long Island. So all you would need for that is you can type in a layer name. So proposed reefs. The URL for that service, you type export, which is the magic word, the layer ID code, and submit. And right there, it would show you those areas. And it would even pull in any information that comes along with it, the legend data. So that's a very useful thing. We have the ability to, if you are a registered user, I should mention, shameless plug, to sign up for the portal for registration. It does unlock a couple of tools like the use of this layer input tool and the ability to save things and draw shapes if you go under this My Planner tab. So for example, let's say you were building this map and you wanted to save it so that you wouldn't have to reconstruct it every time. You can click New, type in a bookmark name, proposed New York reefs, add bookmark. What that means is, let's say you're coming into the site cold, like this. You can click on My Planner, get your bookmarks. I've got tons and tons, so it takes a second to load. Proposed New York reefs. Click on that, and it will even zoom into that level that you saved it as. And you have the ability to share that bookmark in a couple of ways. We have this groups tool where you can start your own group with coworkers or your agency or whatnot, where you can save your bookmarks and shapes that you've drawn into that group, and anyone who's a member would have access to them. So all you'd have to do is check it and share, and it would be in there. You can see all of these other groups that I'm a member of have given me the ability to just click on whatever it was that all of those people have drawn. Beyond that, I'll wrap it up, go to any questions you have, but just quickly pointing out this provide feedback button down there. If you're ever on the portal, something's broken, you're confused about something, you can click on that and get this form and tell us what's up. And I promise I'm the one who answers that. I'll get back to you very quickly. So with that, I think I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions or comments.
Thank you, Karl. That was great. I'm just going to go through the chat log here, because I did see a few questions pop up.
Great.
There was a question about integration with sea navigation systems. Is this data available to commercial navigation systems as well?
Is our data available for commercial
Yes.
navigation? So, yeah, this is completely public. And like I said, you don't even have to register to use the portal. That only makes a few different tools available to you, basically the stuff that allows you to save things. But anyone can go on here and download anything. There are a few exceptions. For example, a lot of that fishing data we cannot offer for a public download because there's some privacy concerns with it, where the data could be used to identify what specific vessels are doing. And so there is a process where you'd have to apply to NOAA to get that permission, and we can steer people in that direction. But that's just one of the, I would say, pretty uncommon examples of something that we can't give away.
Okay, great. Speaking of fishing, there was questions about data and that might show risk of overfishing or any sort of migrations,
Yeah.
if those are able to be realized.
So we certainly, if you look at time series data that we have, that points to some things. You know what? Let me show an interesting set that we have here. Fish species through time. Actually, so this is not exactly a matter of overfishing here, but how climate change really is impacting things. Could be some kind of a commentary on overfishing, but give that a second to load. So this slider, it shows for several different species from the 1970s through 2010s based on federal trawl data, how things have changed. And what you see is for something like alewife here, are now completely, very heavily inhabiting the Gulf of Maine, whereas in the past, they were right off the coast of Long Island. You see that starts to change a bit in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and it just starts ballooning up north, and they're less down here. Here's another way of looking at it. With that was spring, and so here's fall. So we put this data out there without commentary. So even that fish species through time, we're putting it there. This is simply reflective of the NOAA fish trawls, and people who are doing analysis and studies can make those connections. We're just putting it out there for people to use it, however they see fit.
Great. Speaking about the downloading of some of the data, there's a question about the NEMAP survey data and whether you have to download all of it or you can just download species-specific chunks of it.
Good question. It's been a long time since I've looked into that. I believe you can do it. So let me take a look at just one example here. So for that fish data, it pretty much has its own website. All of this was put together by the Marine Data and Analysis Team project, which was led by Duke University a couple of years ago, and we've updated it since. And it has, a wealth of information about where everything came from, and so you can see there are different downloads available for the fish, but this is where you would find it. And have to get into that. So I don't recall offhand how much work it would take to knock that out. That's where the answer would be.
All right. Thank you, Karl. All right. Next question, I think, was about the water quality data you were showing, and if that was using MS4 data.
Okay. Are we talking about the offshore discharge flow? So this is actually kind of an old data set that thankfully is being refreshed right now. So going to the data catalog. Rutgers put this together a few years ago based on 2012 EPA data. See what the metadata says about it. That's where you'd find the full details on it. But right now, the Marine Cadastre is working on a newer version of this because some things have changed. And they're doing a national data set. I think they started and completed their work up in the Northeast and are now working their way down in the Mid-Atlantic. So we probably think that by the summer, we're going to have more complete data for this from the EPA.
Okay, great. And then we have some technical questions. Is this an example of an Esri portal?
It is not. We're actually working on open layers. Matter of fact, we're working on a pretty old version of it. This portal was really built starting in 2014 and into 2015, and there's been several better versions of open layers since then, and we're in the process, thankfully, right now, at the moment, of moving up to open layer 6, which is really going to help us out and unlock some new capabilities for us. We expect that will be done by December, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward on some pretty cool things next year. Like, Melissa, I think when we did the New York training last year, somebody had asked about be able to do a private group, for example, and there were some barriers to that thankfully we'll now be able to get beyond and have that set up and ready in the winter, which would be nice.
Oh, that's great. See, and then there's also a question about metadata. How do you manage it?
In most cases, it's produced by the people who are creating the different data sets, and we take it from them, and it's going through their own peer review processes. But it is interesting where you do have some cases. Here's an example. We didn't really show much on the submarine cables. So if you were to look at the Nazca submarine cable telephone or lines here, and you see how many come to shore here in New York and New Jersey, right? And then you zoom out even further, and it's like all of this activity in our area, and then you scroll down and there's basically nothing from here down through Florida. And that's not a mistake. That's just how it has been for all that time. We worked with the Marine Cadastre Group in 2015 on this Nazca one, which they're an industry organization that represents all of the telecom guys. So it's internet, phone, cable data coming through. But since then, we've seen a whole lot of new cables starting to get built, including, like I mentioned, that one being built by Facebook and Microsoft down there. Here's another one being built by Google, connecting into the Jersey Shore. So we worked with the developers to design that layer, but they were not really into, the act of designing metadata. And so in a case like that, we really had to keep it simple. We just helped them write a description about it with the proper contact information. And we did what we could. So the good thing is, so much of the data on here is coming from practiced people, academic organizations, government agencies that really do that in a very detailed way. But there are times where you just have to do the best you can and not let a lack of a whole lot of information for that stop you from putting something that's really important on the portal. I hope that answers. Got into a bit of a tangent there.
All right, it looks like we have one more question in the chat about how often the data gets updated.
That's a good question. There are core data sets like the AIS, transit traffic for vessels, which are really important, and we try to update annually. Same thing with fishing data, because fishing is a very, pun not intended, a fluid industry. Where they go in 1 year could be different than the next, because fish, travel. There could be all kinds of reasons why they're present in an area one space, from 1 year to another. So there's data like that, which we really work to try to get done every year, every other year, or on a schedule like that. And then there's other stuff like the administrative data, government boundaries, which really don't change. And something like that, we sort of just keep an ear to the ground. We have regular calls with our federal partners to, if something like that is going to change, we'll know about it and make those changes. So it really depends on the data. So there are core things that we're trying to manage from year to year, while at the same time bringing in new stuff that people need and can help.
All right. Thank you very much, Karl. Last chance for any additional questions. I'll just give people a few minutes, but thank you so much for your time, Karl. This was a great presentation. I love the Marco data portal, and I use it all the time at work. So, and I'm also always looking to make our presentations a little more marine focused. So I appreciate your time, and it looks like there are no additional questions popping up. For those of you who want to refer back to this later, it was recorded, and it'll probably take me a week or so to process it and get it on YouTube. So, you can refer to it later. Oh, I see one more thing popping up in the chat from Jeff Herder.
Oh, Jeff, hey, awesome. I should mention Jeff is a member of the portal team. And very close coworker on so much of what goes on the portal.
Oh, it was just a good job, Karl, from Jeff.
Okay. Just quickly want to point out to people that, like I said, I had my email before, but you can also find it in the footer of the site down there. And we do have a Twitter account for the portal, which you can use to kind of keep up to date on any new stuff that we're up to, any upcoming webinars and that kind of thing. But beyond that, thank you very much for giving me your time today.
Oh, there was just one question. Certain data sets can be exported as shapefiles. Is that true?
Yes.
But it's dependent on the data set, correct?
It is. It is. And in some cases, we make it downloadable in a couple of different formats. It just depends on how it was produced, where it came from, and so forth. But and I should also mention, if you use our drawing tool, which I didn't get too much into, but it's a lot like the bookmarks, where you can just create something, draw shape, and save it. But you have the option when you have saved it to export it as a shapefile, so that if you want to use it on your own GIS tools, that you can do that.
Oh, that's a great feature.
Yeah, people are,
All
especially
right.
with offshore wind, using it to help, draw areas where there's compatibilities or conflicts or things like that. So people do find it helpful.
Lost audio there for a minute, but it's 1:30 now, so thank you so much, Karl, and we will get this on the association's YouTube channel as soon as possible.
Great. Thanks again for your time, and apologies again for the delay. But have a great weekend, everybody, and a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.